After
Because I'm requesting you to stand up, please. We're not going to deal with this. You're being very disruptive. You're disrupting the meeting. Stand up.
An elected official arrested and escorted out of her own meeting by police while criticizing the county sheriff.
This happened in Trumbull County, Ohio. Nikki Frenchko was arrested by two sheriff's deputies during a July 2022 commissioners meeting after she was critical of the county sheriff, Paul Monroe. The deputies told Frenchko she was disrupting the public meeting. She was removed and handcuffed, with her later finding out that her fellow commissioners were the ones that called the cops on her. While the charge was later dismissed, she immediately filed a federal lawsuit. This week, a judge ruled that her constitutional rights were indeed violated.
Stand up, ma'am, please. Stand up.
Disrupting a meeting?
That's correct. You're being disruptive. Stand up.
You can be removed for
You
being
stand up
disruptive.
now. Put your phone down, ma'am.
Phone out, please.
Why?
Put your phone down, ma'am.
This is for my safety. I'd rather go out where there's videos. Do you have a video on?
I do not.
No. Put your phone down.
Down. You're now under arrest for disrupting a public meeting.
If they can do this to me at an open meeting in broad daylight and violate my rights like that, it scares me to think of what they would do to someone else behind closed doors or in a dark alley.
This is not Vladimir Putin's country. This is not Bashar al-Assad's country. We do not arrest our political opponents because of something they said.
Queen City News Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes joins us now with his insight on this frankly disturbing case.
Yeah, and Khalif, first off, explain that law that she's accused of breaking.
Ohio has a weird law. It's a misdemeanor to prevent or disrupt a lawful meeting, and the law prohibits obstructive conduct or speech that outrages the sensibilities of the group. And so they're pointing to the comments that she made about the former sheriff of the county. Because an inmate had died and they were going back and forth about it, and the one commissioner gave her an opportunity to roll back her comments, and she pressed forward. And so they went and used this law to remove her from the meeting, which seemed to be extreme at the very minimum, and at the most it seemed to be a constitutional violation.
Yeah, so you agree with the judge's ruling here, even though this happened a year and a half ago and we're now just kind of hearing about it?
1,000%. I often talk about how speech is not free, that we have folks that fight for our speech in this country, but we forget that why we have free speech in our Constitution is extremely important, because at one point you were not able as a country, as a citizen, to say what you want. And we had a whole war of it. And then at some point, our founders decided that what's extremely important is that we allow people to say what we want to be able to say in public forums without the opportunity to be arrested or to be silenced. And we've seen this attack on free speech. We saw it in Montana with the transgender congresswoman there who had the opportunity to say something, and her colleagues attacked her. We saw it in Tennessee where those elected officials were saying something and they got reprimanded, they got removed. And so there is an attack on free speech, not just for individual citizens, but for elected officials. And so I think the crazy point about that is, while we're at an extremely divided country right now, her attorney was a Democrat, and he listed as his reason for defending her, because she was a Republican, he said it doesn't matter about partisan lines. This is a constitutional violation, and it's clearly wrong. I was glad and happy to see that, because normally you see folks sticking to their side and acting like they can't stick up for what's right or what's wrong. This is a clear constitutional violation. And let's talk about the arrest, if we can, for a quick second. The officer saying, when she said, "Is your camera on?" And he was like, "No, it's not." Well, your camera, I can guarantee their policy is, if you're making arrests, your camera needs to be on and engaged. There's a 20-second delay, it will kick on, but he should have hit the button. There's no way you're not going to have your camera on if you're arresting an elected official in the middle of a meeting. So I would love to have seen the whole opinion and to see if the judge touched on that point as well, because he attempted to violate her rights right there as well, to not leave a record or a trail of what happened.
Obviously, it came to be personal in some ways, but also in some other issues that are coming up here. But how much damages do you foresee in something like this?
I mean, that's the problem, is that because what harm was caused outside of that will be hard to calculate. And because they have not expressed what damages she received, I was not able to see that. But what I can tell you is the point was already proven, regardless of even if it was a monetary amount of a nominal fee of $1. The fact that the judge says that's not what we do in this country, that you don't attack political adversaries and allow them to be arrested because you disagree with their comment. That's a problem. That's not what this country was built on. And I'm glad that the judge did that. And I'm glad she stood up for herself and stood up for other folks, and then filed this claim against folks that were completely wrong.
Kind of an example of what to do in a situation should you find yourself in that. And the charges were ultimately dropped. So we'll have to see what happens with that lawsuit.
Depressing. This right here, sad.
All right, Khalif Rhodes, thank you.
And as for Khalif, you can catch his insight on a variety of other topics as our evening news continues. Coming up at 5, Congress